Today I'm going to teach you about the excretory system, also known as the urinary system, which starts off with the kidney, which balances water levels and dissolved substances and controls blood pressure. The kidney starts out by filtering a bunch of fluid and stuff dissolved in the fluid out of your blood. Then it reabsorbs 99% of it back into your blood before sending that 1% on its way in the form of urine. On an average day, your kidney filters out about 180 liters of fluid from your blood, but only 1.5 liters ends up getting peed out. Nephrons, also known as tiny filtering structures, are really important, and each kidney has about 1 million of them. Blood from the heart enters the kidneys through renal arteries. Eventually, that blood reaches a tangle of porous capillaries called the glomerulus. The glomerulus is a starting point for every nephron. Blood enters the glomerulus through the afferent arteriole, and immediately ultrafiltration occurs. The afferent arteriole has a wider diameter than the efferent arteriole, causing very high pressure in the glomerulus. As the blood passes through the tangles of the glomerulus, small molecules will filter through it and into the Bowman's capsule. 20% of the blood plasma enters the Bowman's capsule, while the rest of the blood continues on and out of the glomerulus through the efferent arteriole. For example, red blood cells and larger proteins. The stuff in the Bowman's capsule at this point is no longer called blood, but is now called filtrate, which is made up of salt, water, glucose, amino acids, and calcium. Podocytes are cells in the Bowman's capsule in the kidneys that wrap around capillaries of the glomerulus. They form the inner wall of the Bowman's capsule. During ultrafiltration, blood plasma passes through 3 different layers. First, the wall of the glomerulus, then the basement membrane, which acts as the actual filter, and lastly the wall of the Bowman's capsule. The filtrate then moves from the Bowman's capsule to the next part of the nephron, called the proximal convoluted tubule. This tubule actively reabsorbs useful substances back into the bloodstream. 80 to 90% of filtrate is reabsorbed. 100% of glucose is reabsorbed here, and sodium, potassium, and calcium are reabsorbed by active transport. Chloride is also absorbed passively, and water follows by osmosis as the solute concentration of the cells rise due to the active uptake of ions and glucose. The remaining parts of the filtrate that weren't absorbed continue on to the next part of the nephron called the loop of Henle. Here the filtrate first passes through the descending loop, which is permeable to water, which leaves through osmosis due to the concentration gradient that is created from the ascending loop. This loop is relatively impermeable to salts. The filtrate continues to the ascending loop, which is impermeable to water, but permeable to salts, which are actively transported out of the loop into the medulla. This creates a hypertonic condition in the medulla, so water leaves in the descending loop that is permeable to water. The remaining filtrate moves from the loop of Henle to the distal convoluted tubule of the nephron, where more reabsorption of salt, water, and calcium into the blood occur. Potassium, urea, and the hydrogen ions are actively pumped into the tubule. What is left of the filtrate then moves to the collecting duct of the nephron. The permeability to water of the membrane of the collecting duct is dependent on the presence of ADH, an antidiuretic hormone. A diuretic is a substance that causes an increase in urine production. ADH gets its name because it reduces the amount of urine produced, thereby conserving water levels in the body, and hence it is an antidiuretic. If the body is dehydrated or if the water content in the blood is low, then ADH is released and the membrane of the collecting duct develops membrane channels called aquaporins, so water is taken out of the duct and into the blood. When the water content of the blood is high, then ADH will be absent, and therefore the membrane of the collecting duct is impermeable to water and remains in the urine. Osmoregulation is the control of the water balance of the blood tissue or cytoplasm of a living organism. An inability to osmoregulate may result in edema, which is the swelling of tissues or organs with fluid. Osmoregulation for insects occurs in the Malpighian tubules that they have instead of kidneys. The type of nitrogenous waste they excrete is directly related to the habitat and evolutionary history of the organisms. Diabetics lack insulin, so glucose is not absorbed into cells. As a result, high levels of glucose in the blood occurs after a meal. This means that the blood arriving at the kidneys will have a higher glucose content than normal. The kidneys will not reabsorb all of the glucose, so it will stay in the filtrate and become part of the urine. Blood, glucose, proteins, and drugs are all detected in urinary tests. There are such things as kidney dialysis machines. The process of kidney dialysis is performed to stimulate the function of nephrons, with their primary role of removing urea from the blood. Investigations were carried out to determine how desert animals prevent water loss in their wastes. Animals of arid or desert regions clearly survive with little or no liquid water in their diets. This group of animals includes the kangaroo rat, which lives in hot, dry deserts but hides in a burrow during daylight. It is able to survive without access to drinking water. Physiologists have investigated the metabolism, diet, and breathing and excretory losses of water in this and other animals. They noted that extremely concentrated urine is formed and no sweat is produced. Other desert species show similar adaptations, and it is because of these adaptations that they are able to survive.